Hello, everyone. My name is Christine Yole, and I'm here with Kristin today. And this is our 19th episode of Walking the Path, a show where we get together and talk about our life, where we're at, what we're noticing in the collective, covering subject matter on authenticity, finding our way, the path of spirituality and integrating that with our humanity, and a range of things. So I'll just start by saying hello, Kristin. And if you want, for those who are new to this, tell them a little bit about who you are and where you're at on your life path.
All right. Hey, Christine. It's so nice to connect again. It's been a few months since we've done this. So thanks for suggesting this again. It's really great and somehow comforting and familiar. We've both been moving, and I have recently relocated to Gabriel Island off the coast of British Columbia, and I've got a cozy home for the winter, which is pretty exciting. And gosh, yeah, I'm sort of in a reevaluation period of, what's my role now? We just moved to a tiny island. Like, where does this leave me with, my purpose or whatever? So I'm intending to do some yoga and meditation instruction here this winter. I think that'll be a really beautiful offering to the community. I know there are others doing it, but we each bring our own unique flavor to things. And Tanner and I host Sacred Cacao Ceremony, which we're also reevaluating. It's a pretty tiny island to try to have a normal, regular business going for that here, which I don't think will be our intention, but we'll just see where things take us. It's been really interesting already, and things always seem to work out in ways we actually couldn't imagine. So I'm really open to seeing what happens. And I really have a passion for things like this, talking about the surprises, mysteries, and magic of committing to a life of spirituality and kind of walking that path. Sometimes it feels like we're blindfolded, and sometimes it feels like we've got super triple, quadruple laser vision, but it's pretty wonderful, and I can't imagine my life any other way at this point. So that's me in a nutshell. And what about you? Let's hear about what you're up to and what's your passion right now?
So I've recently moved back to Calgary. I was living here for a few years between 2013 and 2016, and then I was back in BC, and now I'm here. I've started up my weekly classes again. I do in-person classes with groups. So say last week's subject was trusting you to create your life. This week I'm doing a class building supportive relationships. Next week is playing with possibilities. And so just these themes that invite basically people to gather, and just the benefit of connecting, and then bringing into the room, what would you like to receive from this time? And then just really going from there. But I just see such a need to have these authentic types of conversations and also bring people together in person. And then I also do the online version of it because I've developed an online audience in the last couple of years. But just, I weave in some of my counseling stuff, some of my consciousness work, some of my energy healing work, and just kind of really create this container to explore these big subjects that can be kind of thrown around, like just trust yourself, just love yourself, be authentic. But what does that really mean? And what does that really look like? And how do we live that? So just really grounding it. And so that it's not just a concept or an idea or something that you just need to figure out and do right. It's more like a lived practice to actually benefit us deeply and improve the quality of our life, and have it so every day is rich with meaning, and you feel whole and fulfilled and resourced in every moment. So that's the target. And so I do one-on-one sessions, I do online meditations, and I'm also in a period of building, as I'm in a new place again, but also one that I've been before. And so just kind of bridging the old and the new, if you will, and creating something that's true to where I am now and who I am now. So so let's jump in our subject today. So where shall we begin?
Well, something you just said, gosh, oh, I know what it was. You were talking about your in-person classes weekly. and how it's so nice to connect with people in person. And this is really a big reason why we host the cacao ceremonies that we host, because it happens in person. And, lately, especially in the last year and a half, it's felt like sort of a radical act to gather people in person. And, I've been hearing a lot about this loneliness epidemic and people just being super isolated because, ironically, of screens in between, which, it's not a bad thing. Technology is such an incredible gift, and when used properly and in balance, can really rocket boost our lives and our well-being. But at the same time, a lot of people are finding a hard time, I think, finding that balance. And there's a lot of isolation where everything is done through a device, through a screen. And so anything I'm seeing that can bring people together is so incredible. Just this week, we were fortunate to go hear a talk by Yarrow Willard of Harmonic Arts at the local Gabriola Island health food store. And the room was packed and everyone was excited about mushrooms and, nature's medicine. And I was just like, I felt like a little kid. I was so excited to be in that room full of other people that were excited about that. And listening to someone who's so passionate, and having that unified field of like excitement and happiness and like that togetherness and that belonging. And it was nice for me because usually Tanner and I are facilitating that, but it was such a gift to be able to just be a participant and just witness that and just receive the energy of a group feeling excited about life and passionate about something. Yeah. So I'm sure you noticed something similar in your in-person groups.
Both, I think in my life here, like I've been walking a lot, and like I'll walk to my Pilates studio, and then I'll go to the grocery store, and I kind of live, it's almost like being in a small town next to the city. But just having the in-person contact, and I realize just how much it benefits me, even if it's in small ways. It's like just seeing familiar people or feeling, in my case, feeling familiar energy. I visually see them, but I more feel and sense them. But yeah, and then to have the in-person classes, it just allows for this rich exploration. I think it's just good for our human nervous system. And I think that's one thing that I've found on my own path. And also I'm seeing those of us kind of committed to evolution or awakening or spiritual practice. Some of those practices can be very isolating. So meditation, closed eyes, you're, on your own, or even we could be with other people in yoga, but everyone's in their own frame. And when we've been fixated in the external world, it's hugely healing and beneficial to then direct our focus inward and get to know us on deeper levels and really access our inner world and get to know it. And then there comes a time to then bring that energy into our lives here, right? And then connect from this new space of being, or this new richness that we found within. It's like, oh, here I am, and now I get to express this. And I feel like a lot of us are playing with that a little bit, to going like, okay, wait a second, I could, close my eyes and feel at peace, but is that it, right? Or is that just what I'm here, maybe to radiate love and light? Or what does it look like to go beyond that? And then also to reintegrate our more human needs. Sometimes when we go to spirituality, it's because our needs weren't met in our life. Like we didn't have, parents that consistently met our needs, or people around that really had our best interests at heart. A lot of us navigated a world, say emotionally, even if we had pretty good parents, emotionally, they may not have been overly attuned to us and where we were at and what we required, and helped us develop ourselves emotionally. So a lot of us are just becoming more mature emotionally and knowing what our emotional needs are, and then we're having a moment of, wait, can I actually get these needs met? Or am I just going to re-experience that like yearning for it and then the letdown? And I feel like a lot of us are just on the brink of actually true healing, which is my emotional needs are met by others. And thus I can trust relationship instead of doubt relationship and just want to stay inward. So What's your thought on that?
Yeah, it's interesting how many adults I know, quote unquote adults, I'm referring to people kind of like 30 and over that are in my life who I admire and love, and they're very close close friends and family to me. And it does seem like this funny, like full circle resurgence of people going like, do I really still have this unmet need, or this unhealed pattern, or this habit, or this addiction, or this whatever you want to label it as, you know, and through our spiritual practices and our paths, I think a lot of people feel like that shouldn't be a thing anymore. But, you know, I think a really big part of having the support and the foundation for doing that work in ourselves too is being able to openly talk about that and talk about, you know, I have this need, and, you know, perhaps you'd be a part of supporting that for me. And perhaps there's something I can support you with. You know, I was just out for a walk with a friend just before this call, and we were talking about our silly old patterns of, like, she was sharing a story about showing up at an event and showing up solo, and, you know, maybe feeling awkward because you showed up solo and you didn't come with like a cool group of people, or, you know, like there's so many stories that we still hold on to in our 30s, 40s, 50s, you know, and until we kind of get to the root of that, all of those things, you know, they're kind of like these little nagging things that aren't healed. It's like a dust bunny under the rug, or, you know, stuff's been swept under there. And like, how long are you going to trip over that bump until you're like, all right, it's time. So yeah, I think, for me, there's definitely stuff that still comes up. I'm getting better at like hearing myself and hearing my own thoughts, and catching, you know, oh, that's a thing still. Like, how can I work on that? And how can I seek the support from my peers and my partner and my family to, you know, help heal that for me and fully integrate that in my adult life. And I think that's really important, is being able to vocalize and verbalize it to the people that we do trust. You know, hopefully we all have somebody that we feel we trust enough that we can allow that vulnerability of those things that we're trying to heal, or those unmet needs that are still sort of haunting in the background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I found for me and other people is almost like we've used spiritual practice to attempt to eradicate needs, because it's like, well, if I have no needs, then I'll never be let down again. And it feels like we're coming to a time of, well, true healing is experiencing the opposite. So if we are isolated, or we really wanted to feel close to someone and we didn't get that, and so we have this kind of, you know, and then we kept reaching, and then at some point we stopped reaching. It's like true healing is just reaching and receiving. And that's what healing is getting to experience the opposite. And so it does take a lot of courage and to be willing to go there again, if you will, and actually choose to allow or open up or step into this, you know, possibility for, say, closeness or intimacy, or being felt, heard, understood, and seen, and receiving it, and then also gifting it to others, and just getting to know what it is to both gift something and receive it. I think many of us have either been on the side of the coin of been like in the helper role, or like even in friendships, maybe a little bit imbalanced, like we're always the one kind of leading them, or they're kind of like clients, but sort of friends. And then us going, wait a second, what if I can have, you know, a reciprocal dynamic, or one where we're both really benefiting and supporting each other, just as beings here on earth, and also in our expansion or evolution path. But it's just, I feel like that's the stage of our navigation of going, okay, we can quote do this on our own, but do we have to? And what could we create if we allowed more people in, or started to just even build the energetic possibility of, wow, what if there are people who can meet these needs? And what if I were to allow that, instead of be like, I'm over that. I am whole and, you know, within myself.
Whole and holy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I think, I had a thought, and then my laughter made the thought go away. But, yeah, I mean, how can we, I think what it starts with for me is leading by example too. And, you know, finding those those things in my life that aren't complete, or that I've been sort of pretending like I don't have to work on, or that they aren't an issue for me. Like, I feel fairly fortunate in that I feel like there aren't any huge ones at this point, but there are always little things to work on, and I'm looking forward to continuing to form relationships in my life with people who, were there for each other, like you said, in a more balanced way. And I was just thinking of a quote that I was reading. I can't remember exactly, but I'm reading this really interesting book right now, which ties into everything. A friend gifted me this book, and it's called Come of Age. It's called the case of elderhood, the case for elderhood in a time of trouble, and it's called Come of Age, and it's by Stephen Jenkinson, and it's a really powerful book. And he talks about the serious lack or complete non-existence of elders in our culture, or like elderhood, what it used to be known as, or what it used to be. And he kind of starts dissecting what's been going on in our Western culture that's prevented this lack of elderhood. The young people are confused and lost because they have no guidance from the elders. And the people who would be elders are confused because, there's like this weird aging phobia, or like elder phobia, that's been developed in our culture. And this book I had a hard time starting it because it's not like a rainbows and magic feel-good story. It's just like this is an issue. Does anyone else notice this? And as soon as I started reading it, I was like, I've been talking about this to people in my life for years. I know a lot of folks that are my elders technically, but I found very few who I feel super inspired or supported or, engaged with in a way where I look at them as my like spiritual elders or my guidance elders, and someone's like, well, you don't need elders. Like you know what's going on. We all have the answers within us. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but that's not the point. There's like a hole in our culture, he's like, babies are a thing, toddlers are a thing, children are a thing, young adults are a thing, middle-aged folks are a thing. And then all of a sudden it's like retirement. And then he's like this weird, freaky extension of middle-agedness, like all the way into your 80s and 90s. Like, no, that doesn't make sense. Anyway, I don't know how this weaves in, but I know that it does. And it's like, just stepping back and like analyzing our relationships with life, with ourselves, with, our needs. And as we all do age, how do we all fit into society together? And he talks about something you said earlier too. This was the whole point of what I'm saying, but he talked about, he had a metaphor of riding a bicycle. He's like, when you're riding down a smooth paved road, like you're good and you're balanced and everything's just coasting along. And then it's not until you hit something that feels like imbalance, like say a patch of gravel, or you hit a pothole and you're like, oh my goodness, I better pay attention. There's something to learn here. So I think that's true with meeting our needs and relationships with others, is like when we are in an easy situation with other people, like it's nice that it's easy, but there's often very little learning or growth when something is so smooth and easy, and I think a lot of us tend to seek out those relationships that are just really smooth and easy because like, that sounds good. But it's these ones where, we might ruffle each other's feathers or question each other or, have a healthy debate or, whatever that energy exchange is, that's like, hey, we both have something to learn here. So kind of those fringes of imbalance, and what you said about going within, finding your own personal balance and then going outward again. And then that's where you discover the imbalances in your life so that you can then go back in and be like, all right, how do I feel and what can I do here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just really allowing relationships to be a platform for expansion. And sometimes we have a sense of relationships being maybe a trap or something, like it's safe, but it's not really promoting your growth or whatever. We have these different like things or past experiences or even traumas where even though we had a relationship, we didn't feel like they're really there for us or that we could really be there for them. Or it's like, how much more can we like reset and say, okay, that's what has been, what is now, and kind of interrupt the track of sameness and going, okay, what are my authentic needs now, and can I trust myself enough to allow them to be there in my conscious awareness, and then take action to support them coming to fruition, because it really benefits all. It's that reciprocal thing, because for many of us, we actually benefit a lot from meeting people's needs, right? And yeah, and if we have that, when you're talking about society or aging, it's just like we have these, like, maybe relationships are somewhat of a guarantee early on, although they may not be great. And then as we get to a certain phase of life, it's like we hope we have them, but some of us have fewer. And then you get to an age where you just hope someone's there for you, or else you're screwed. Like, it's just like, we just want to, like, change us and realize that, that the loneliness and the isolation, it is something to be addressed collectively. Like, I know we want to do the book thing. Teal Swan just came out with her book, The Anatomy of Loneliness, and talks all about, like, the pillars of loneliness, like separation, shame, and fear. And then the second half, how to build lasting connection. Because she said it's, like, so vital right now that we step into what we need and actually moving in that direction of having healing relationships, and they're also, as we go into relationship, it's like, okay, here's what I need or what I like. And the person can be like, here's where I'm at. And then you come up with, like, a third option, which is greater than either one. So that can be also where the growth is too, right? When it's like, we're not on the same page, but there's the commitment to getting on the same page, then that's where growth comes in, right? And that's where we get to develop our communication and increase our intimacy and all those things. So it's just like moving towards what we may have not been in the name of spiritual practice or having all the answers within or whatever. And it's just sometimes we'll gravitate towards the spiritual path that doesn't require us to meet those deeper unhealed spaces, right? But as many of us, life is really inviting that to happen, some in a pretty aggressive manner for some of us, to say, like, now's the time, right? Like, because what would it be like if we lived in a world where we felt connected, supported, loved, and that we could both extend our love and receive that love, which is just essentially, I like Teal's definition of love. It's like, love is to take something as part of yourself, because if we feel like it's a part of us, we'll look after it, and we can't harm that part of ourselves without harming ourselves. So that connection actually creates emotional and physical safety, and that's what we ultimately want to reestablish, is actually just feeling safe around people, and that there is space to, like, really create something beyond what we've known before, instead of kind of just sink.
Totally. Yeah, I'm totally resonating with everything you're saying, and I'd like to read that book. It sounds really good. Sounds really relevant right now too.
Mm-hmm.
So I think
Just so
I'll
important.
add that to my winter reading list. I actually was saying I was feeling like this lack of inspiration when it came to books over, like, the last year. And all of a sudden I kind of said that out loud one day to my mother-in-law, and I was like, if you come across any books that are, like, mind-blowingly good, please let me know. And then all of a sudden I received all these books at once. So I have this stack now, and I was like, okay, that's what happens when you ask for what you really need. Like, you just got to say it. Like, I need some inspiration here. Winter's coming. Like, there's a lot of cold, dark hours ahead. And which leads me to another great topic. Like, what can we all do to create other forms of light in our lives when we're approaching the darkest time of the year? I just said, when I was out for a walk in the forest the other day, I said, I used to dread this time of year, like the late fall, when all the colors are kind of gone and everything just feels a little bit like sleepy death. And, like, I used to feel that, like, this heavy, like, dauntingness, this kind of murky energy. And now it's like this new phase of magic that I see. And I'm like, after 36 years, I'm like, okay, I'm seeing that it's that time of year where I need to put extra ownership on myself ownership on myself to create more of what I love, more of the things that bring me that lightness and joy in my life. And also to be that for others, which was part of my morning walk conversation, was like, if we're feeling like, gosh, it's dark and lonely right now, guaranteed there are other people feeling that. And if they're too shy to do something about it, and we're too self-conscious, or we have guilt or shame or concern, like, if someone's not the one who's like, hey, does anyone want to get together? Or, let's play cards, let's play a game, let's have a conscious conversation, let's have a potluck, let's go for a hike, like whatever it is, like someone has to be the one to break that pattern of humans being afraid of each other. And being more willing to suffer in our own like bubble than to perhaps step outside of our comfort zone, or that sameness that you were talking about, to break that mold and be like, how can this be different and new? So I feel really good, and doesn't mean I don't feel challenged some days, like with it getting dark so early and I feel like it's 10 o'clock, but it's really 7, I'm like, whoa, it's only 7. I can't go to bed yet. It's too early. I'll wake up at 4 a.m. and then what? And then it's dark. And so just creating that new heightened awareness of like, this time of year is challenging. What can I do to be proactive in creating that light and joy and that safety for myself? Yeah. Maybe it's kind of like a winter nesting. I don't know. Like,
but I love that thing of just really getting on board with it. Like instead of resisting the season or being like, oh, it'll be fine, or, oh, it's different. Like, it'll be like, okay, well, I know this, or I know these tendencies within me as it gets darker earlier. This is what can happen. How can I like step into that and offer myself and offer others, like not just solace, but beyond that, like nourishment, right? And I get ultimately for each of us to like allow the healing, which is ultimately experiencing the opposite. So say last winter, if you felt lonely and isolated, this winter it's like, oh, I feel nourished by these books or by these people that can just walk over, or right, or oh wow, the healing, it's like the healing is the opposite experience. So instead of healing being a thing we do so we can have the change, it's like having the relationship is the healing of what's gone before, which is almost like where it's not been worth it, or it's been challenging to organize or get-togethers, or people cancel the time, or whatever those things. It's like, how much can we just give ourselves permission to get curious about, well, what's different now, and where are we now, and what if we could actually allow our needs to come to the surface, not so that we just feel disappointed and let down all over again, but so that we actually go towards the healing of them, even if it takes years to really experience that. It's like that, like, it's like having hope, essentially. It's just like bringing them forth to say, I wonder, like, life, universe, show me, and getting curious about like calling that in. So yeah, just how much more can we be nourished through the winter season and just really experience something beyond what we have so far.
Absolutely. I'm actually excited about it. I've been finding an incredible amount of nourishment from nature where we are right now. There's an eagle nest just like across the road in a tree. And when I was out for a walk, the ocean was incredibly rough over the edge of this cliff. And all of a sudden we could hear sea lions barking and playing. And we were just like, this is amazing. We live here. Like, the medicine that just stepping outside, putting on some warm layers or a rain jacket, wherever you live in the winter months, like, just meet the weather and meet the season where it's at. Like, there are so many people that complain, and I grew up with a lot of people that complained about the cold and the wet and the snow and the ice. And it's like, here where we are, it's not icy or snowy, but it's wet. Like, we're into the wet season, right? So I just invested in a new rain jacket and some new rain boots. And I was like, I'm doing this. Like, I had kind of a sort of a weak rain jacket. It was like, it would get you to the car from the grocery store, but I like invested in a nice long one and some nice tall boots to keep out the water. And I was like, I am diving fully into this wetness. And I've got a wood stove here if I come home and I'm still wet anyway, in spite of all the rain gear. But, like, just going like, is this going to hurt me, or can it actually nourish me, stepping outside my comfort zone and like meeting life where it's at, and like looking for the healing and the magic in a scenario that some people might be like, ooh, I think I'll just stay by the fire and like sip a coffee. Well, and maybe that's what they need. But yeah, I'm really finding I'm challenging myself to just like meet these life circumstances that I've been given, like sort of suddenly and unexpectedly. And I'm just like, what? Oh, okay. What do I need? Like, maybe it's things, maybe it's people, and just like just filling in that like question mark of like, well, maybe it's this. I'm going to go try it and give it my best and see what this does for me. And this will be a winter that I always remember as the winter where I got all the rain gear and just like went out into it, you know, and I've been hunting mushrooms for medicine and like, oh man. Yeah. But you know what? It's required like some like urging and nudging of myself, because it's easy to stay in an old pattern and just be like, oh, well, like winter's kind of meh and it's kind of whatever, but spring will be here soon. But like, yeah, I guess I'm just kind of like putting out a challenge to people. Like, you know, what are your patterns around winter and darkness and cold and wet or whatever it is where you are? And like, see if you can turn that around and like, just dive into it and like see what you can discover for yourself. Maybe you can learn new loves that you didn't know you had and new things that nurture your soul in ways you didn't know you had. And maybe some of your needs will get met that way, you know, new hiking buddies, or I don't know, like it's all possible. I'm excited for, you know, the results of what happens with this personal experiment.
I love that. And that feels like, yeah, kind of a message for us all, like through this talk, to just like really meet our life circumstances. Yeah, for me it was ordering the like down jacket with the hood that's like longer and the boots that have like really good grip on the bottom. And it was amazing the difference that made, because kind of in a moment before I was like, oh well, I could just put on these layers because I had more of like BC winter stuff. And then as I ordered those things, or as like I got the boots, then I was like, oh, great. You know, it's like things opened up again instead of starting to shrink. And so I think it's just noticing when we start to shrink and go, okay, wait, stop. What can I choose to like expand again, essentially, to like, which is essentially an openness to life, or are we closing off to life? Be like, I'll just get through this part and then I'll open up again when it's nice, right? It's like, no, let's like meet the circumstance. And then there's that alchemy of like, just the magic of that, like kind of moving through or moving with. So I love it.
Me too.
Well, this is great. So thank you all for joining us for this episode of Walking the Path, number 19, as we step into these winter months in this part of the world anyway, you know, summer in other parts of the world. But may we just really meet our circumstances and recognize our needs, have the courage to allow them to bubble up and have them met, or just move towards that, even if it's not instantaneous, but it's just holding them as sacred rather than denying them as frustrating.
Right on. Thanks, Christine. It was really great to record another episode.
Thank you so much.
And thanks for watchers.
Yeah. See you next time.